peace within. Let the living begin. Raw and living foods enlighten me. Feel the power in every cell. I'm so glad to be feeling well. Raw and living foods enlighten me. Feel the peace. Feel the peace. Peace, peace.
It's wonderful to be out here in the forest where the air is pure and wild foods grow like this dandelion. Today I'm going to talk about the keys to longevity and vibrant health. And I'd like to start off with telling you about my past, how I went from eating the standard American diet, also known as SAD, living the standard American lifestyle, rushing around, feeling a lot of stress, and then not being so healthy, to changing my diet, changing my lifestyle, and becoming vibrantly healthy. It started back in about 1993. My mom had had colon cancer, and then she had clogged arteries. And one day while sitting in the hospital room, a gentleman came in who didn't work for the hospital and gave us his business card, told us that he taught people how to heal through diet and lifestyle changes. And I was very intrigued to hear that that was possible. I've been going to my medical doctor and asking, is there anything that I'm eating that can possibly be causing all my problems or some of my problems, this mucus, congestion? The answer was no. I was referred to the registered dietitian. Once again, the answer was no. Yet, when I went off dairy products a few years later, I found that I could breathe through both my nostrils for the first time in my life. Turned out I had a dairy allergy, and the registered dietitian had no idea that all that dairy that I was eating was causing all that mucus and the inability to breathe through both nostrils. So let me give you some pictures. I'll paint a picture. If you had some seeds and you took half the seeds and put them in good soil and watered them, gave them sunlight, proper temperature, those seeds would sprout and grow into beautiful plants. And then you took the other half of the seeds and put them on concrete, no water, no soil, and you expected them to grow? Well, of course, they wouldn't grow. Those seeds would stay in a state of suspended animation and eventually die. Well, what I plan to do here in this presentation is teach you how to make your body like the concrete to those seeds, our body to germs and bacteria. If we have our body full of mucus and our immune system is weak, bacteria, other types of pathogens can grow readily in us, like the seeds in good soil with good water and sun. Let's make our body strong so those things can't take hold in our body, grow, and make us ill. And here's another picture I'd like to paint for you. If you're driving down the road and the oil light went on your dashboard in your car, and you pulled into the service station, the mechanic said, well, I need to perform surgery on your dashboard. Took the dashboard apart, clipped the wire to the oil light, put it back together, said, okay, $300. You went back down the road, no more oil light on the dashboard. The symptom, oil light on the dashboard, went away. You think the problem is cured, but not so. You keep driving, that engine is eventually going to seize up, and then you're going to have to spend a few $1,000s or more getting that engine rebuilt. Well, oftentimes what happens to us when we're sick, we go to the doctor. The doctor isn't trained in nutrition that deep to know what's causing that. Oftentimes the doctor is trained that for every symptom, there's a drug that takes away the symptom. So they write you a prescription, you take that drug, takes away the symptom. It's kind of like clipping the wire to that oil light. Just taking away the symptom doesn't stop what's causing the problem. Like in the car, low oil. You just need to add oil. In us, oftentimes it's some nutrient we're missing or it's some poor lifestyle habit. So today I'm going to teach you about nutrition, about lifestyle, and about the mind-body connection. It's kind of like a three-legged stool. One of those legs is nutrition, not only what we eat, but what we absorb. The other one are your lifestyle habits. And then the third is the mind-body connection. If that stool is missing a leg, what happens to the stool? Falls over. Same thing with us. If we don't have all three of those legs to stand on, we're not going to get the health results that we're seeking, optimum health. Let's start with the first leg of our tripod of health, nutrients. And I'm going to go through each nutrient, starting with vitamins. Let me quote to you what the Tabor's Cyclopedic Medical Dictionary had to say about vitamin loss in cooking. Vitamin A, destroyed by high temperatures. Vitamin B1, destroyed by exposure to heat. Vitamin B6, rapidly inactivated in the presence of heat. Folic acid, destroyed by heat. They got the name folic or folate from the root word foliage, leafy greens. Leafy green vegetables like your salads are so loaded with folic acid. When a woman is pregnant today, the medical doctor will tell her that she needs to take a folic acid supplement because most women are not eating enough dark green leafies to get the folic acid that they need, and this vitamin is destroyed by cooking, according to the medical dictionary. If you're eating lots of organically grown dark green leafy vegetables, you're going to get loads of folic acid, all the folic acid that you need. Vitamin B12, according to the medical dictionary, unstable in hot acid or alkaline solutions. Dr. Gabriel Cousens' research has shown that up to 97% of vitamin B12 can be destroyed when you cook a food. But even if we are eating foods high in B12, it doesn't necessarily mean we're absorbing it. We need an acid secretion in our stomach called intrinsic factor in order to be able to absorb the B12 from our foods. And many people are lacking in intrinsic factor, especially elderly people. So the best way to ensure that we're getting enough B12 is to take it sublingually, in other words, underneath the tongue. You can take a lozenge or a liquid. There are several different types of commercially available B12 that you would find in a health food store. And the type that works the best is methylcobalamin. For years, they only sold cyanocobalamin, and then they came out with methylcobalamin, which is a better form of B12. Our liver can store vitamin B12 for at least 7 years. But after that, we might start to run low. And there are many symptoms associated with a vitamin B12 deficiency. There's fatigue, impotence. Some people get numbness or tingling in the hands or feet. And this can be irreversible nerve damage. You can have it for the rest of your life. Some people get stomach problems. There was a show on television called Medical Mysteries. It was a series. And in one of these programs, they had a woman who was deficient in B12 for about 10 years. And she went through all the different symptoms, and she went from medical doctor to medical doctor, actually to specialists. And each specialist gave her some kind of a drug to take away the symptoms. None of them suggested that she have a B12 check. Finally, after 10 years, one doctor said, oh, perhaps you have a B12 deficiency, and sure enough, that's what it was. So she got her B12 before she ended up with pernicious anemia that could have been so severe that could have killed her. The best test for a B12 deficiency is called an MMA, methylmalonic acid. It's through the urine. Many medical doctors don't even know about this test. Oftentimes they test the blood, which is not the best test to check for a B12 deficiency. So as far as vitamins go, the only vitamin that I'm suggesting that you take on a semi-regular basis, once a week, once a month, because your liver will store the large amounts in a supplement, is a B12 lozenge or liquid that goes sublingually under the tongue. Let's go back and see what the medical dictionary had to say about vitamin C. Easily destroyed by oxidation, lost in cooking. Now, practically every animal on our planet can manufacture their own vitamin C, such as dogs and cats and other wild animals. The exception to this rule are humans, other primates, and 3 types of small animals. We need to consume vitamin C on a daily basis. The United States government set an RDA of 60 milligrams of vitamin C, which can prevent scurvy. But we need much more vitamin C than 60 milligrams a day to be optimally healthy. When they studied different animals, and especially smaller animals, they produce thousands of milligrams of vitamin C. We have concentrated vitamin C pumps in our brain, our arteries and capillaries, and our skin, all made of collagen, which vitamin C is the building block to create that. Let's go back a few hundred years. And when sailors were on an around-the-world voyage, sometimes 9 out of 10 sailors died of a simple vitamin C deficiency called scurvy. And then in 1747, a British physician named James Lind discovered that you could prevent scurvy and cure a raging scurvy with fruits, which were high in vitamin C. So he went before the government in England and he said, this is all we need to do. We get the sailors to start eating fruits and we can save all these sailors' lives. But unfortunately, in 1747, the mainstream medical establishment over in England said, no, we don't agree with that. This guy's a quack. There's no science behind what he's saying. And they believed the mainstream medical establishment over this one independent doctor. That's very similar to what's going on today. There are many independent studies being done finding out this information, and the mainstream medical establishment somehow is not picking up this good scientific information and teaching the medical doctors in the medical schools. In the United States, most medical schools only give the doctors about 1 semester of nutrition. And in my opinion, and in many other experts' opinion, the nutrition that they're teaching is outdated by at least 10 years, and some of it much more, and is just not cutting-edge nutrition, is not adequate in order to teach people how to reverse many of these diseases. So what I'm suggesting as far as vitamin C goes, fruits and vegetables. Many of us know that oranges are a good source of vitamin C, but few people know that broccoli is an even better source of vitamin C than oranges. Many fruits and vegetables are excellent sources of vitamin C, as long as you're eating it raw, because once again, the medical dictionary says that vitamin C is lost in cooking. Moving along, and the last vitamin that's listed in the medical dictionary is vitamin E, and I quote, destroyed by heat. So you see, about 75 to 80% of vitamins are destroyed when you cook your food. We all know that we need a diet high in vitamins if we want to prevent many diseases. Diseases like beriberi, pellagra, scurvy, these are known diseases. There are many more diseases that they're just finding out about, combinations of vitamin deficiencies that they're just finding out about that can cause disease. Let's prevent all that from happening by eating a diet high in living foods that are loaded with vitamins. And one more thing about vitamins. When you go to these discount stores, pharmacies, supermarkets, you see these vitamins, very inexpensive on the shelf. Well, most of these are synthetic vitamins. They're not the types of vitamins that our bodies have evolved with over thousands of years that come out of plants. These are vitamins that are isolated in a laboratory. They look similar under the microscope, but they don't act the same in our body. There's also chemicals that they're adding to these vitamins to stabilize them, to give them colors. Many of these synthetically produced vitamins can actually do more harm than good. So get your vitamins from fresh fruits and vegetables. What are enzymes? Well, there are 2 types of enzymes in our body. There are metabolic enzymes, which are required to run all our organs. Our heart, our lungs, our liver, our brain, they all require metabolic enzymes to perform their functions. If we didn't have these metabolic enzymes, our organs would stop functioning and we would die. Then there are the digestive enzymes that we manufacture and secrete every time we have a belly full of food. Those digestive enzymes break down our food so that we can turn them into the cells of our body. our skin, everything we're made out of comes from our food. If those digestive enzymes weren't there to break them down, we couldn't turn that food into our body. Those same enzymes that we manufacture and secrete, the digestive enzymes, to break down our food, are present in living foods. Fruits and vegetables are loaded with enzymes. We want to eat a diet high in enzymes because what they have found is that as we start to age, our body starts to run low on enzymes. Dr. Edward Howell and many other researchers have found that we have a limited supply or a genetic potential for how many enzymes we can manufacture and secrete in a lifetime. And as we start to run low on this enzyme bank account, as Dr. Howell called it, our body will take the precursors that are supposed to be going to the metabolic enzymes to run our body and take them and turn them into digestive enzymes to digest that food, that big belly full of food that we have. It can't just sit there, so it's more important that our body takes the precursors to some of these metabolic enzymes that aren't as important, such as the metabolic enzymes that keep the color in our hair. These enzymes are called tyrosinase. They're known for putting the color or the melanin in the hair shaft. It's more important that we digest our food. So those and other non-essential metabolic enzymes, these precursors are taken away first to turn into digestive enzymes to digest our food. After years of that, our body will start to steal the precursors to the more important organs, and we can end up with some symptoms or diseases. You go to your medical doctor and say, hey doc, this is happening or that's happening. The doctor is not trained to know that a deficiency of metabolic enzymes is causing this. So the doctor will give you some kind of a prescription drug to take away those symptoms. Much better to get a diet high in enzymes so your body saves those precursors to the metabolic enzymes to perform the different tasks and functions in our bodies. Fresh fruits, raw vegetables, all loaded with enzymes. Nuts and seeds have enzymes in them as well when they're raw, but some of these nuts and seeds are very high in enzyme inhibitors. So we need to soak and germinate these nuts and seeds before we eat them. Simply soaking them overnight and then rinsing them will germinate many of these nuts and seeds and deactivate most, if not all, of the enzyme inhibitors, making them much more digestible, bringing the nutrient levels way up. Sprouting is another excellent way to consume different types of grains and other types of seeds. What about digestive enzyme supplements? You can go to a health food store and find many of them on the shelf. Well, there are two categories of digestive enzyme supplements, and I'd like to explain both of them to you so you have the proper information, because if you choose to buy digestive enzyme supplements, you need to know what the facts are. There are plant-based enzymes, and these work in a very broad range of pH. Our stomach can go from acid to alkaline, and these plant-based enzymes will go in there and help us break down and digest our food no matter what the pH, and they'll conserve our metabolic enzyme precursors for using on our metabolic enzymes. Then there are the animal-based enzymes, which work in a very narrow range of pH. So if your stomach isn't the proper pH and you take those enzymes, it will not help you digest your food and you'll just have wasted your money. Also, if that animal that they're taking those enzymes from had some type of virus or perhaps a prion, prions are known for causing mad cow disease, well, it's possible that you can get more than you bargained for, some kind of a sickness, from taking those types of enzymes, because you can't heat those enzymes to sterilize them. At around 118 degrees Fahrenheit, those enzymes start to break down. That's why cooked food is deficient in enzymes, and raw food are loaded with enzymes. How about minerals? More than half the elements that we need to stay alive are minerals. There's vitamins, there's amino acids, or the building blocks of protein, there's air and water, and then there's minerals. Minerals are extremely important. I'm going to mention two of the essential minerals today. Both of these minerals, when they're in food that has been cooked, the minerals undergo changes. And these changes make the minerals not absorbable and utilizable by the cells of our body. Selenium is number one. The research states that selenium compounds are unstable and they break down in the presence of heat. So we need to get our selenium from raw foods. If you looked in Raw Foods Bible, my book, there's a section on selenium. And I have a list of deficiency diseases that come off a medical database that are associated with a selenium deficiency. You'd see many of them, including cataracts. Many elderly people are getting cataracts today. Even if you're eating a lot of raw foods in the diet, because the soils in the United States are mostly deficient in selenium, you're probably not getting enough selenium. So my favorite source of selenium are Brazil nuts. When I find Brazil nuts out in health food stores, I always find them raw. I haven't seen any Brazil nuts that have been roasted. So even 1 or 2 Brazil nuts a day are a real good way to get selenium in your diet. Zinc is a very important essential mineral. I talked about enzymes just a little while back. Well, there are at least 300 known enzyme chain reactions that require zinc to happen. What am I talking about with an enzyme chain reaction? Well, when our organs perform their functions, the metabolic enzyme or the catalyst needs other nutrients to help perform its task. So there'll be a metabolic enzyme and then say a vitamin. Vitamins are also known as coenzymes. Then say another metabolic enzyme and then a mineral and then another metabolic enzyme, and then it can perform its function. Well, at least 300 known symptoms or diseases can result as a deficiency of zinc. My favorite source of zinc are raw pumpkin seeds. They're loaded with zinc, and I eat just a little bit of a handful every day, which is going to give me my RDA for zinc. Dark green leafy vegetables, if they're organically grown, can be a very good source of zinc. If they're not organically grown, most likely they've only had nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium as a fertilizer, and most soils, especially in the United States, are deficient of most of the minerals, with, say, the exception of calcium, because calcium is very dominant in many soils. But organically grown vegetables are normally given a range of at least a dozen and up to 92 different minerals, especially if they're given some type of a seaweed as a fertilizer. So organically grown vegetables are a much better source of zinc and other minerals. Let's talk about some toxic minerals while we're on the subject of minerals, such as mercury. None of us would put mercury into our body, yet many of us have these silver fillings known as mercury amalgam fillings, which are about 50% mercury. Are these mercury fillings safe in our bodies? Well, some government officials would have you believe that they are, but let me tell you what science has shown. In Calgary, the University of Calgary, there was lots of research done on mercury amalgam fillings. And I'm going to pull 2 little pieces of research out and explain them to you. They took a filling in a molar that had been in someone's mouth for 25 years and put this tooth in water that's body temperature, about 98.6. And then they took it out and they held it in front of a phosphorescent screen. A phosphorescent screen allows you to see mercury vapor. They took a pencil eraser and gently rubbed this mercury filling, which would simulate chewing. And what it looked like was someone lit a match and then blew out the match. You know the way the smoke would come off the match? Well, that's the way the mercury vapors looked coming off of this filling in front of that phosphorescent screen. So we know that these mercury fillings leach. There are many, many other tests have been done that prove that these fillings leach on a regular basis. Chewing on hot foods and drinking hot beverages make these fillings leach mercury vapors even more. Here's another study that they showed in the University of Calgary. They had petri dishes that had neurons. Neurons are brain cells in these petri dishes. And these neurons communicate with each other, with the other brain cells, via neurite processes. They're kind of like tentacles that connect the brain cells where impulses travel so they can communicate. They dropped different heavy metals in the petri dishes and nothing happened until they dropped mercury in the petri dish. And when mercury came in contact with these neurite processes, they degenerated. These neurite processes just essentially fell apart. These cells just came right apart, essentially making it so that brain cells couldn't communicate with each other. Many people are removing the mercury fillings in their mouth and replacing them with composites. There are many generations of composite fillings, or the white fillings. Some doctors are still back in the old days when the composites first came out and think that you can't put composites in a molar. They'll tell you that they're too soft and that they're temporary fillings. Well, that's not the case. These days they have composites that do very well in molars. You can chew on them and they don't degenerate like the first generation of composites used to. 15 years ago, I had my mercury fillings removed and replaced with composites. And they're still in my molars. They haven't worn away like some of the dentists would have you believe. If you're going to get your mercury fillings removed and replaced with composites, don't make the same mistakes that I did. When those mercury fillings are replaced, the dentist needs to take certain precautions to protect your health. Because when you drill into these mercury fillings, large amounts of mercury vapor are released and chunks of mercury can fall out into your mouth and swallow them. That's what happened to me. The dentist must use something called a dental dam. It's a plastic bag that goes into the mouth, clips onto the tooth, comes out of the mouth, and catches the chunks of mercury that fall out of the tooth when they drill into the tooth. You should also be wearing a respirator. The respirator will ensure that you don't inhale those mercury vapors. And if you need any more evidence that these mercury fillings are leaching and they're harmful, think about these facts. Japan, Canada, Sweden, Denmark, in fact all the top European countries have restricted the use of mercury amalgam fillings. They're not using them anymore. What do these countries have in common? They have health care that's paid for by the government. In the United States, we're paying for health care out of pocket. And they're still putting mercury fillings into our children's teeth. What about protein? All protein is made up of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. Do you know where all protein is formed on this planet? It's formed in plants, green leafy plants. In the oceans, it's the algae. It's a process called photosynthesis, sunlight on a plant. That's where the amino acids are formed. Everything we're made of was once in a plant. I would like to tell you what the World Health Organization recommends as far as protein goes. I'm not going to tell you what the United States government recommends as far as protein goes, because the United States government allows lobbyists to come in and influence their recommendations on nutrition, especially protein. And the World Health Organization has experts from many different countries. So what they're recommending is that we get at least 5% of our total daily calories coming from protein. And they say if we get at least 5%, we're not going to become deficient in protein. Well, the facts are that 9% of calories in an orange are derived from protein, zucchini 17%, strawberries 8%, broccoli a whopping 42%, and cauliflower 31%. The fact is that the commonly consumed plant foods contain between 6 and 45% of their calories coming from protein, which exceeds the World Health Organization's minimum recommendation of getting at least 5% of our total daily calories from protein. Now, what about cooking protein? The Max Planck Institute for Nutritional Research in Germany has science that proves that when you cook food, you destroy or denature approximately 50%, about half of the protein or the amino acids in that food. Those amino acids become denatured. Is denatured protein something that's safe to be putting into our body? Well, there was 30 years of research done, and they wrote something called the Wendt Doctrine that showed that denatured protein over time can block cell respiration. What am I talking about? What is cell respiration? Well, we're made of billions of cells, and every cell in our body needs for glucose, amino acids, and other nutrients to go into the cell, and then waste products to go out of the cell. Let's make believe for a second that we are a cell in a body, and we're all constipated, and we're very hungry, and we really can't find enough food. We can only let little bits at a time, and we really can't go to the bathroom all at once, just little bits at a time. That's kind of like what I mean by cell respiration is blocked. We wouldn't feel very good if we were constipated and didn't get enough nutrition, and neither would our cells. You might go to your doctor with some symptoms, and the doctor might say, well, geez, I can't find anything wrong with you. You might walk out of that doctor with a prescription for an antidepressant, or maybe if you had pains, you walk out with some type of a painkiller. That's not getting to the root of the problem. Dr. John McDougall, who is a regular medical doctor specializing in nutrition, years ago put out a dare. He said, I dare any scientist and nutritionist to try to design a diet composed of a variety of plant foods, starchy and non-starchy vegetables solely, and at the same time be deficient in protein. And to this day, no researcher or scientist has been able to design a diet composed of a variety of those plant foods and at the same time to be deficient in protein. We would not have survived as a species if this were not true. So what about fats? According to the medical dictionary, there are two types of fats that are essential. We must get them in our diet because our body cannot produce them. It's the omega-3 family of essential fatty acids and the omega-6 family of essential fatty acids. Our brains are as much as 80% fat in some people, and about half of that brain is omega-3 essential fatty acids and half omega-6 fatty acids. It turns out that the diets of our ancestors were much higher in the omega-3 fatty acid than the modern diet today. Some researchers are saying that we need a ratio of about 4 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, and many of us have about 20 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, leaving us deficient in these omega-3s. So what we need to do is focus on foods that are high in omega-3s. I had many deficiency symptoms of omega-3 fatty acids. If you looked in my book, you would see there's a whole list of symptoms that come off a medical database that are associated with omega-3 deficiency. Practically everything that plagues people, omega-3 deficiencies can play some role in that. That's because every cell in our body, and our body are made of billions of cells, our cells have a membrane. And this cellular membrane requires some of these essential fatty acids to be healthy. So foods that are high in omega-3s. Well, flaxseed, ground flaxseed is an excellent source of omega-3. I started off with flax oil. And when I had been using hand lotion for years because I had dry skin and I started supplementing my diet with fresh flax oil, my dry skin went away for the first time in my life. Chia seeds are an excellent source of the omega-3 fatty acids. Hemp seeds and hemp oil are an excellent source of both omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in a very good ratio for us. If you looked in the section in my book on nuts, you would find that it would say 0 under omega-3 in all the different nuts with the exception of walnuts. Walnuts are an excellent source of omega-3. However, they're also very high in omega-6. It's not an ideal ratio, but it would help with a raging deficiency of omega-3, as most of us have in this country. The typical garden variety herb called parslane, or some people pronounce it purslane, is an excellent source of omega-3. I find this weed growing all around the world, sometimes growing up through cracks in the sidewalk. And you can get these seeds commercially, throw some in your garden. It's an excellent ground cover. There's many varieties. All of them are good sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Some people take fish oils for their omega-3 fatty acids, and many health food stores are recommending fish oils. I personally do not recommend fish oil as a source of omega-3 fatty acids because the fish oil being sold in the United States is actually very high in contaminants, different chemicals, different heavy metals are actually allowed to be in these fish oils. And why are they accumulating in the oils of fish? Well, our oceans are very polluted with these different chemicals. And when the big fish eats the smaller fish who ate the smaller fish, these chemicals accumulate in the fatty tissues of that animal, and they end up in the fats or the fish oil, which is pure fat. Think about it. Cod liver oil. You're squeezing the oil out of the liver. What is the liver? It's the filter of the body. It filters out all the chemicals, and they accumulate in that organ. And then when you squeeze that fat out of that organ, you're getting a large amount of these chemicals. And they're actually allowing that to be sold in these oils in the United States. And when you keep taking these oils every single day, the tiny amounts of these chemicals that are in there can accumulate in your body, in your fatty tissue, and eventually build up to levels that are unsafe, in my opinion and in many experts' opinion. For those of you who know a little bit more about nutrition and have questions about the EPA and the DHA, different types of omega-3 fats that we're told are high in fish and not readily available in plants, well, the facts are that our body will turn the omega-3 in these plant fats into the EPA and DHA in our body, provided we have proper nutrition. B vitamins, magnesium, just common nutrients that we get in a really good, healthy diet, and our body will change these omega-3 fats into those other types of omega-3s, the EPA and the DHA. And by the way, the reason that the fish have these fats, the EPA and the DHA, is because they're getting from the algae in the ocean. The smallest animals in the ocean eat the algae, and then they move up the food chain, and that's how they get into the larger fish. Fiber is an essential component of food. My mother had colon cancer years ago, and I wanted to find out what caused colon cancer and how it could be prevented. So in doing the research, I found that the countries that have the highest fiber intake, they have the lowest incidence of colon cancer and all cancers of the intestinal tract. The countries that have the lowest fiber intake have the highest incidence of colon cancer and all cancers of the intestinal tract. It correlates exactly. So what foods are high in fiber? Well, anything that grows out of the ground is high in fiber. All your fruits, even your watery fruits, your vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, and grains before they're processed are all excellent sources of fiber. What foods have zero fiber in them? Well, we could sum it up in one sentence. Anything that came from anything with a face. So in other words, eggs, dairy products, cheese, meats, whether it come from a fish or a goat or a cow or any other animal, all those foods are completely deficient in fiber. We want to be eating a diet that's very high in fiber if we want to prevent these diseases of our intestinal tract, because diets low in fiber lead to constipation. What is constipation? Well, if you're not having a bowel movement after every meal, that is constipation. Many of us are only having one bowel movement a day, and that is really not enough. Many of us think that when we have a bowel movement, we should be forming stools. Well, the science shows us that the best type of bowel movement to have is actually a bowel movement, and excuse me for being a little gross, but it should come out kind of like soft serve ice cream. Some people think if they have a bowel movement like that, that they have diarrhea. No, that's not diarrhea. Diarrhea is something a little bit more drastic than that. So we're not only what we eat, but nutritionists say we're also what we absorb. Many of us can be eating all the best foods, but are not absorbing the nutrients out of these foods. There are two foods that have a lot of mucus-forming elements in them that we should eliminate from our diet. First food is wheat. Wheat has a protein in it called gluten. You notice the first few letters of that word gluten, glue, because that's exactly what it has in it. You can take white flour, mix it with water, and use it to hang wallpaper. It's a very good paste. And it does the same thing in our intestines. Our intestines have villi, tiny little hair-like projections similar to my fingers where we absorb our nutrients. These are microscopic projections. And when we have a lot of gluten in our diet, it can go in there and cause a layer of plaque to grow over these villi where we only have the tips of the villi to absorb our nutrients. And then gluten also has an intestinal irritant in it called ghladin. Ghladin actually irritates these villi. So in the small intestine, where we're supposed to be absorbing our nutrients through these villi, when we're eating wheat, our absorption is very poor, and many of the nutrients may go through and pass out the other end. Dairy products are another thing that people eat that can inhibit the absorption of nutrients in our intestinal tract. Dairy products have a protein in them called casein. Casein is what was originally used to make a product called Elmer's glue. You notice there's a picture of a cow on that bottle of glue. When I was a little kid in elementary school, I used to put the Elmer's glue on my fingers, let it dry, and then eat it. It said non-toxic on it. Well, when this casein goes into our intestinal tract, those little villi where we absorb our nutrients, those villi get plaqued up with this casein as well, and then we only have the tips of these villi to absorb our nutrients. So I recommend a diet free of wheat and other gluten-containing grains, and a diet free of dairy products, especially cow's dairy, if we want to have optimal absorption of the nutrients that we take into our body. Many of the foods we eat have medicinal value. I would like to speak about 3 foods today that have medicinal uses. The first food are avocados. When my mom had her heart disease, her cardiologist told her that she should avoid avocados, but she could have all the meat and the dairy products. That was okay for her heart disease. I thought that was a little bit of funny. And I happened to go to New Zealand on vacation, and I bought an avocado. And you know there's a little sticker that they put on the piece of produce that has a number on it so the cashier can ring out that piece of produce. Well, on that sticker there was a writing on the periphery, and I read it, and it said, "Approved by the New Zealand Heart Association." I said, wow, that's very interesting. The entire New Zealand Heart Association is saying that avocados are good for your heart, and my mom's cardiologist, trained in the United States of America, is saying don't eat avocados, not good for your heart. So I said, hey, let me do some research and find out what the facts are. I found out that in Coral Gables, Florida, at a VA hospital, medical doctors gave between 1/2 and 1 1/4 avocados to their patients with high cholesterol. And lo and behold, it lowered the cholesterol in those patients. The same research was done in Israel with the same results. Eating avocados lowers cholesterol. Well, what are the nutrients in avocados? Can those nutrients be good for our heart? Well, avocados are high in vitamin E. Vitamin E has always been known as a heart-healthy vitamin, good for circulation. Things that are good for circulation are good for the heart. Avocados are also a good source of B-complex vitamins. Some of the B-complex vitamins are known to lower homocysteine levels in the body. There is a very famous, prestigious researcher that found out that an elevated homocysteine level is a better indicator of whether someone's going to have a heart attack than an elevated cholesterol level. But there's no pharmaceutical drugs that can lower homocysteine levels. Only nutrients that are found in foods like B-complex vitamins. So because there's no pharmaceutical, the medical doctors are not being told about homocysteine, and most medical doctors are not even checking for homocysteine levels. People that have perfectly normal cholesterol levels are sometimes dropping dead of heart attacks, and it's because of the homocysteine levels. So avocados, yes, a very good heart-healthy food. In Africa, they actually eat avocados as an aphrodisiac, perhaps because it's vitamin E, and vitamin E is a very good nutrient for men to build their sperm count. Now, celery is another food that my mom's cardiologist suggested she stay away from because celery is a naturally occurring source of sodium. And back in the early 90s, when she had her high blood pressure, her doctor said you need to avoid sodium, so avoid celery as well. It's true that about 50% of the people who have elevated blood pressure, when they cut sodium out of their diet, their blood pressures will drop. The other 50%, well, it has no effect. But table salt is a completely different thing than the naturally occurring sodium that's in plants like celery. Sodium is an essential mineral for our body. If we don't get enough sodium, we can run into all sorts of symptoms. Our adrenal glands can burn out. Sodium is extremely important nutrient to have in our body. So I did some research on celery, and I was going through translations of ancient Chinese medical texts that go back thousands of years. And what I found is that since antiquity, the Chinese have been using celery to lower blood pressure, and that modern science has now found what they call phytonutrients in celery that cause relaxation and dilation to veins, arteries, and capillaries. And when these veins, arteries, and capillaries dilate or open up, blood pressure goes down. So about 4 pieces of celery at a time can have an effect on lowering blood pressure. And people with elevated blood pressure can do that several times during a day, either making a juice out of it or snacking on celery. And that can have an effect and help people lower their blood pressure. Okay, one very important thing that you should know about celery is that when celery wilts, a chemical appears and concentrates many times that is actually toxic to the human body. Our liver will have to detoxify this chemical. So fresh, crisp celery is very good to eat. But when celery becomes limp and it starts to wilt, you really need to throw away that celery and buy some crisp, fresh celery. If you'd like to keep your celery crisp longer, you can try soaking it in water, even in the refrigerator. And when that celery stays hydrated, it will remain crisp and not become limp and loaded with this chemical. Turmeric is a very amazing herb. Turmeric is a root that looks very similar to ginger, except that it's orange and has many medicinal qualities. Medical science has now shown that turmeric can actually inhibit a very aggressive type of skin cancer called melanoma. What they have found is that when turmeric comes in contact with these melanoma cells, something called apoptosis occurs. the cancer cell is more likely to implode or self-destruct. These tests were done on humans with melanoma. They've also done tests on laboratory mice that had breast cancer. And when turmeric came in contact with the breast cancer cells on the mice, those cancer cells were more likely to implode in apoptosis. So I try to include turmeric in my diet every day. Most people find it hard to find the fresh turmeric root, but the powder is readily available in most stores. I don't recommend buying your turmeric powder in a supermarket or a mainstream market because they irradiate spices sold in mainstream markets in the United States. If you go to a health food store, you can get non-irradiated turmeric, which is a much better way to buy this very precious herb. Turmeric is also a very strong anti-inflammatory. Many of us develop inflammation in our bodies, and we go to a medical doctor, and the doctor will prescribe a drug to take away the inflammation. Well, almost all pharmaceutical drugs are liver toxic, and especially the anti-inflammatory drugs, the non-steroidal ones, have been associated with thousands and thousands of deaths every year, and many people get hospitalized from these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and the damage that they do on our body. A much better choice is to go out and get yourself some turmeric. If you don't like the way it tastes, you can buy it in capsule form and take those capsules the same way you would a pharmaceutical drug to lower your inflammation. Instead of having a side effect such as liver toxicity or worse, the side effect you might get is less likely to get cancer. Leg number 2 of that three-legged stool, lifestyle habits. We're going to go through several right now, starting off with cosmetics. What is the history of the cosmetic industry in the United States? In 1938, the Food and Drug Administration and the United States government granted self-regulation to the cosmetic industry. They essentially said, you chemical manufacturers manufacturing all these different cosmetics and the chemicals that go into them, you can regulate yourself. You can decide what toxic or non-toxic will mean. So these chemical manufacturers got together, and what they decided was if at least 50% of the laboratory animals live when they're testing a new chemical to go into their cosmetics, they would call that non-toxic. So to this day, if 40-something% of the animals die, they're still calling that non-toxic. And you might buy a cosmetic that has 20 different chemicals in it, and you can't even pronounce some of these chemicals, and we don't know what all the different chemicals from all the different cosmetics can do when they're entering our body. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm not eating these cosmetics, I'm using them on my skin, and why should it matter if 40-something% of the animals died? Well, the facts are that everything that goes on our skin ends up in our bloodstream, and it goes to our liver, and our liver has to deal with detoxifying these chemicals. For instance, if someone's trying to quit smoking, they go to the doctor gives them a nicotine patch. This patch goes on the skin without breaking the skin, delivers nicotine into the bloodstream and around to all the different parts of the body. There are many examples that I can give you of this, but the bottom line is that anything that goes on our skin is going into our bloodstream. So we should only be putting things on our skin that we would eat. Many of the chemicals that are going into cosmetics will say not for internal use, for external use only. Let me give you an example of one of these chemical ingredients. I list the top 10 chemical ingredients to avoid in cosmetics in my book, Raw Foods Bible. But for now, we'll just talk about one, which is called triclosan. It's an antibacterial agent that is appearing in many of the antibacterial soaps. It's registered with the United States government as a pesticide. So if you're out buying organic food, trying to do all the right things, and then you're out buying the cheap soap in the discount store with the antibacterial in it, well, you're putting this pesticide into your bloodstream every time you wash your hands. Not a good idea. Also, top researchers say when they look at triclosan under the microscope, it has a chemical structure that is very, very similar to the way Agent Orange looks under the microscope. In case you don't know what Agent Orange was, it was a defoliant used in the Vietnam War. And when soldiers who were out in the field got sprayed with this defoliant, the Agent Orange, they ended up getting sick from it, and they were able to trace it to this Agent Orange. Many people today are using these chemicals on their body. They're getting into their body, they're getting sick. They go to the doctor. The doctor has no way of knowing that these chemicals are building up in their body and causing their ailments. Oftentimes, they'll say, well, we can't find anything wrong with you, and of course, you'll walk out with some kind of prescription that takes away whatever symptom that you might be feeling. I recommend getting your cosmetics from clean sources. Health food stores sell the best type of clean cosmetics, but even then, not all the brands you find in health food stores will be ideally clean. My favorite brand is Aubrey Organics. They sell very clean cosmetics. My shampoos and hair conditioner are from that brand. Weleda sells a toothpaste that is very clean, no sodium lauryl sulfate, which appear in many soap, shampoos, and even toothpaste, which was originally invented as a garage floor degreaser. It lathers up and produces a lot of foam, but has also been shown to cause people to lose their hair eventually. And I like to use Dr. Bronner soaps. They come in many different odors. They have essential oils that give them their different odors. All plant-based, very good soaps. There's only one cosmetic that I know of in the United States that comes with a warning label, and you'll find that on any tube of toothpaste that has fluoride. I recommend fluoride-free toothpaste. And if you read carefully all the fine print on the back of that tube of toothpaste, you'll find it says somewhere, if you consume more than the amount used in brushing, call your poison control center immediately. Why do they have such a warning on there? Fluoride has the ability to inhibit many of the metabolic enzymes that run our thyroid. Many people are developing hypothyroid or underactive thyroid as a result of using fluoride every day. There's no way you can brush your teeth with this fluoride and not have it go into our bloodstream. Remember earlier I told you about taking B12 sublingually. You put it under your tongue, goes into the bloodstream. Well, that's exactly what happens when you brush your teeth with fluoride. Small amounts of fluoride are going into your bloodstream and they're being delivered to different parts of your body. If you go to the medical doctor might test you for a hypothyroid. The problem is that the doctor's tests are designed to show only a severely underactive thyroid. If it's mildly or moderately underactive, the doctor's tests will not show up that you have a problem with your thyroid, and you'll be sent away still with a underactive thyroid. If it's severely underactive, the solution will be they'll give you some kind of a prescription drug. Take this every day for the rest of your life. The medical doctors are not trained to say, get off the fluoride. Make sure your city water is not fluoridated, and to give you certain nutrients which will help your thyroid start to function properly. Once again, I mentioned Weleda. Weleda is an excellent fluoride-free toothpaste with no sodium lauryl sulfate. There are other toothpastes out there that are also very good. Read the ingredients. How about indoor air pollution? Do you know that the air in your own home can actually be loaded with toxic chemicals? What proof do I have when I say this? Well, there's a branch of the United States government that goes to factories to make sure factory workers are not inhaling excessive levels of airborne contaminants. And these experts have come out and made a few public statements. Number one, they say indoor air pollution is one of the top 5 threats to public health in the United States. Number two, they say that in Los Angeles on a smog alert day, when you might hear on the radio, go inside, shut your windows and doors, many people's homes are 5 times and higher, greater in airborne contaminants than the outdoor air on a smog alert day. Well, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Inside our home, many of us have carpet on the floor. What's in carpet that might be contributing to the chemicals that are in the air in our home? Well, in almost all carpets that are commercially available, they put formaldehyde in to stop the color from running. Because if you shampooed that rug and the color came out, well, you'd be pretty upset. You'd want your money back. You might even sue them. So they dose it with formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is embalming fluid. It's a very poisonous chemical that we should not be breathing in. They also put flame retardant chemicals in carpet, because if someone dropped an ash off their cigarette and it lit up the carpet, well, you'd sue them also. So now the law is that carpets have to be flame retardant. Can anyone go into a place where they're selling new carpet or have new carpet on the floor and not smell those chemicals? You're smelling poisonous chemicals that we should not be breathing in. What are some alternatives? Well, hardwood floors are very good, especially if you finish them with varnishes and clear coats that are not off-gassing, which I'll talk about in a moment when I talk about paints. There's ceramic tile, there's natural stone tile, there's marmoleum, which does not off-gas, which replaces linoleum. Vinyl flooring off-gasses pretty badly, and I would not suggest that either. Well, moving up to our walls. Most of us put paint on our walls. Paint sold in the United States can be as much as 60% VOC, volatile organic compounds. These VOCs are essentially poison gases to the human body. And when you first paint and you smell that new paint smell, sure, you know that there's lots of chemicals there. But did you know even when that paint is dry and a year later, when you can't really smell it, they're still off-gassing these VOCs? I personally can go into a place that's been sealed up, that's been painted a year ago, and I can still smell some of these chemicals coming out of the paints because I'm somewhat chemical sensitive. I don't live with these chemicals every day like most people who have become desensitized to it. What's the alternative to these VOC-laden paints? Of course, zero VOC paints, which are commercially available all over the world these days. I saw them in Australia when I was visiting there. Even in the United States, Home Depot is carrying a line of what they call their fresh air paint, zero VOC. Zero VOC paints are the way to go. Now, what about the furniture in our homes? Well, many of us have furniture that's made from particle board, which is glued together. If you go into a place that sells this new furniture, I mean, I can smell it as soon as I walk into the door. Lots of chemicals coming out of these types of furniture. So you can buy solid wood furniture. There are some places that sell unfinished furniture, and you can buy the zero VOC paint stains varnishes for your furniture, for your solid wood floors. And once you're done varnishing or staining this furniture, you have a nice piece of furniture that's not going to off-gas. And what am I talking about? Tables, chairs, dressers, shelving units. Essentially anything that's made out of wood in your home that's a piece of furniture can be made out of solid wood rather than these particle board pieces of furniture that have a veneer or a fake wood finish on them that are off-gassing terribly in your homes. We can also buy used furniture, going through a thrift store or a secondhand store, going on the internet, Craigslist. They sell furniture that's been used. After it's been around for many years, most of the chemicals that are going to off-gas from it have come out, and it's off-gassing very little at that point. So keeping your old furniture, buying used furniture is also a way to go. And what about cushions, such as couches, easy chairs, beds? Well, once again, flame retardant chemicals are being added to these cushions. What they've recently found when they've examined the placenta after a woman has given birth is that the placenta has these flame retardant chemicals in them. And if these flame retardant chemicals are in the placenta, it's likely that they're in the infant. No one knows what these chemicals can do to that infant later in life. So why not try to avoid these flame retardant chemicals? There are some places that sell foam that's not for use in furniture that has not been treated with flame retardant chemicals. And I would seek out those places if you want to buy new foam for your couch or easy chair or seats. There are places that sell furniture, especially beds, that are made out of a certain type of foam that's naturally flame retardant. Now they cost more to buy that type of furniture, but it's really worth it, because if we're spending 8 hours a night on a bed that is loaded with flame retardant chemicals and you're breathing that in, that's 1/3 of your life. So what can you do right now to improve the air quality in your home? I'll give you 2 simple solutions. Well, number 1, you can get house plants. Many house plants can take the chemicals that are off-gassing from the furniture and the other things in your house and take these chemicals, put them in their lower leaves, leaves turn brown and fall off, and you take the leaves and throw them in the garbage. They're improving the air in your home the same way the rainforests clean the air on the planet. In my book, I list the top 10 plants that can improve indoor air quality. And indoor palm trees are amongst the higher ones on the list. The peace lily is also an excellent plant to have in your home. Now, another very simple solution is opening a window or a door. Many people, in fact, the sickest people that I visit when I pay house calls are the people who live in homes with all the windows and doors shut up all the time. If it's hot, they run the AC. If it's cold, they run the heat. If they're comfortable, as far as temperature goes, they don't do anything. And what's happening is all these chemicals off-gassing, and without ventilation or an air exchange in the home, the chemicals build up. And that's when these government agencies have come in, tested the air quality in the home, and say it can be 5 times or higher in these chemicals than Los Angeles on a smog alert day. So by simply opening up windows, and let's say you do it for 20 minutes a day, say early in the morning when the air is the purest, if you live in the city before all the traffic outside, 20 minutes a day, air exchange in the house, excellent recommendations. So what about your car? What about that new car smell? Is that something that we want to be breathing in? Absolutely not. All the things that the car is made out of, the carpets, the paints, the plastics, the glues, are all off-gassing chemicals into your car that's known as new car smell. In Japan, the Japanese Health Ministry has set standards for the amount of indoor air pollution, or VOCs, that are allowed to be in buildings in Japan. And all the auto manufacturers in Japan have voluntarily taken on these standards and are starting to make their cars that are available in Japan low VOC. That doesn't mean that the cars that are Japanese made that are available in other countries are low VOC. Right now, they're just making these low VOCs cars available in Japan. What we need to do, if you have a new car, is to let the car air out before you get in it if it's been parked with the windows closed up. If you have an air selector switch, you can set that to take in the outdoor air rather than to recirculate the air in the car. Because essentially what you're doing is you're taking these chemicals, VOCs, and circulating them around. They're not going anywhere. You can try to drive with the window open to get some fresh air circulation in your car. The bottom line is, if enough people in other countries start to become conscious of these chemicals coming out of their cars, and they demand that their car manufacturers make a low VOC car, if enough people are doing this, eventually they'll start making the cars low VOC. But there has to be a demand for it. Another thing that might help the demand for low VOC cars become more dominant is if the people who fall asleep behind the wheel and crash sue the car manufacturers because one of the symptoms, besides eye, nose, throat, and lung irritations, is drowsiness from breathing in these VOCs. If someone gets drowsy, falls asleep behind the wheel, sues the car manufacturer, they're more likely to start making a car that's low VOC. For now, I recommend buying a car that's several years old. Most of that new car smell will have off-gassed. If you go into a car and you can smell it, you don't want to be in it. If you go into a car and you can't smell it, chances are that is a much better purchase for you. Electromagnetic radiation, also known as electromagnetic fields, for short EMF. What are they, and are they harmful to our health? Well, EMFs are present wherever electricity is used. Electrical appliances produce EMF fields. We can live in harmony with these EMF fields provided we're a safe distance from them. First, let me give you some studies that have been done on these electromagnetic fields. In the New England Journal of Medicine, there was a study published. In the year that this study was done, they found utility workers, people who work on high-tension power lines. They had twice the incidence of leukemia as workers in any other field in the United States. That's a very significant study. Dr. Robert Becker had laboratory animals that all had the same type of cancer. And when these animals were exposed to EMFs, compared to the control group, their cancers grew twice as fast. And then studies were done on chickens. Chickens who were exposed to EMFs had changes in the amount of calcium in their brains. And on with the tests. There are so many tests that show electromagnetic fields are dangerous to living organisms. How do we know if an electromagnetic field is present? Well, it's a device called a Gauss meter. Gauss meters are manufactured in many different countries around the world. This model was made here in the United States. The scale that we use to measure electromagnetic fields is called the milligauss, small m, large G. And they say below 3 milligauss is considered safe by European standards. Many experts in the United States that say below 2.5 milligauss is considered safe. Many appliances around our home are over 100 milligauss. But just like I mentioned before, if we're a safe distance away from them, the field drops off and it doesn't reach our body. Take our alarm clocks, for instance. If you have an alarm clock about this size and it's plugged in to an outlet, so it has electricity running to it, it'll create an electromagnetic field that comes out, say about 2 feet from that alarm clock. If you have it right near the head of your bed, well, that electromagnetic field can be penetrating your head all night long. If you slide it off to the far end of the night table, well, that'll get it far enough away so the electromagnetic field will not be penetrating your brain while you're sleeping. Electromagnetic fields travel through everything that our home is made out of, whether it's glass, stone, steel, brick, wood. EMFs just pass right through all of them, so we can't readily block them out. Once again, we need to be a distance away from them from where they drop off. You take the Gauss meter, you go around, you measure that safe distance, and then you can be protected from them. Many people talk about wearing different devices such as jewelry or crystals, diodes, sacred geometry. In my studies with a Gauss meter, none of those devices change the reading on the Gauss meter. So I personally don't believe that those devices work. Perhaps they're operating on another level that science can't prove, but I'm a man of science, so I prefer to use the method of measuring them with a Gauss meter and staying away from them. And what about your computer? Many people ask me. If you have a panel screen monitor, those are the very thin, flat monitors, those don't produce electromagnetic fields more than an inch or two, so you're safe having your face right in front of them. But the older types of monitors, the deep ones, those produce lots of electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic radiation several feet out. You need to have a good distance away from those. Some people are using electric heaters. Anything with a heating coil or a fan with a motor can produce a pretty good electromagnetic field. You need to be several feet away from those also. Oftentimes the wiring that's running through the walls in our homes can be producing electromagnetic fields. So sometimes I'll walk into a home with the Gauss meter, measure all the different areas in a room, and find out that one wall has a high electromagnetic field from the wiring in it and another wall doesn't. So you might just need to rearrange the furniture. If your bed is up against that wall with the high electromagnetic field, you might be exposing yourself to those EMFs all night long. So moving your bed to the other side of the room away from the electromagnetic field can be a simple solution to that. Another device that many people are using nowadays are cell phones. Cell phones have two types of radiation coming out of them. One is the EMF radiation, and the other is RF. Well, I've already spoke about EMFs and their hazards, and I'd like to speak about RF now, and then I'll give you some simple solutions. In my Motorola mobile phone user's guide, in the health and safety information, they said, and the first thing that they said was, there's no proof that mobile phones are absolutely safe. So if someone got a tumor or some type of cancer from using your mobile phone and tried to sue, well, their lawyer will say, we provided you with this user's guide. In there it said there was no proof that it was safe. So you took on the risk. We gave you the information. The judge would say, case dismissed. And then they spent about the next page and a half trying to convince the reader that the cell phone was safe, but nothing that would hold up in a court of law. Then, on one long run-on sentence, they said, and I quote, however, mice genetically predisposed to develop one type of cancer, when they were exposed to the RF from mobile phones, they developed more than twice as many such cancers. The next thing they said was, when humans get tumors of any type in their head, the tumors are generally located on the side of the head where the mobile phone is used. And lastly, they said, there's one rare type of glioma called neuroepitheliomatous that is associated with mobile phone use. And putting that in my own words, what they're saying is there's a rare type of a cancerous brain tumor that they're only seeing in people who use mobile phones. So how can you protect yourself from the radiation coming out of mobile phones, both EMF and RF radiation? Once again, it's distance. Most phones come with a speakerphone option. You put that speakerphone on, you hold it out at an arm's length away. On a Gauss meter, with most phones, the EMFs will drop off to 0 or a very low level. That will prevent the EMF radiation from penetrating your brain. The RF radiation, or the radio frequency from that antenna communicating with another antenna, when that's at an arm's length away, the RF drops off to a much lower level, and in many phones, a level that is considered safe on many of the meters that measure that type of radiation. Many people ask me about headsets. Well, a certain type of headset can protect you 100% from those types of radiation. And this is a headset that has an air-filled tube at the upper portion. You won't find these headsets in your cell phone store or in the discount stores. You can sometimes find them in health food stores or on the internet. The way this works is The speaker is located several inches or more away from your ear. Because the speaker on a regular headset has a wire delivering the electricity right to it, it creates an electromagnetic field right in your ear, right in your brain, I should say, from the sound coming out of the speaker. This type of headset, the speaker is down lower. It's designed not to make a large electromagnetic field, and it's only sending sound up the hollow air tube. It works on the same principle that a stethoscope works. A doctor will listen to your heart on an air-filled tube called a stethoscope, and this works under that same principle. When you put this headset on a meter, you'll find zero EMF radiation coming out of it, and if you keep the phone a few feet away, the RF radiation will also be far away from your head, that you won't be getting radiation through your brain. These headsets are also available on my website, which is www.rawfoodsbible.com. I'd like to talk about what I call use it or lose it syndrome. I'm talking about your body and I'm talking about your mind. Many people in the world today are becoming couch potatoes. They lay around, they're not very active, and what happens is people become very stiff and inflexible, and their mind starts to deteriorate. We start to forget. So I'm going to give you some exercises both for your mind and for your body to keep your mind strong and to keep your body flexible. Let's start with the body. The old saying is, you're only as old as your spine is flexible. And I believe that 100%. So I'm going to show you some exercises that I use to keep my body completely flexible. We'll start with the neck. I used to have neck problems years ago where my neck would go out. And I do these exercises every day. What I do is inhale, slowly look one way. Exhale, slowly look another way. And I'll do that a few times every morning. I do my exercises every morning when I get up, because I know if I don't do them first thing in the morning, oftentimes I'll never do them that day. And then you can inhale, look up, exhale, chin to chest. Do that a few times. And in just those few simple movements, you took your neck, you moved it that way, you moved it this way, and the cervical spine in our neck got a really good stretch in. And then we have our back, our spine. Many people are having problems with their spines. Here are two exercises that are excellent for stretching and strengthening your back. Inhale, belly and chest out. Exhale, collapse the belly and chest. And do that several times, inhaling out, exhaling back. And then we put our hands up on our shoulders. Inhale, twist one direction. Exhale, twist the other direction. And we do that several times. And in just a matter of seconds, we took our spine and we wrung it one way, twisted it the other way, got some very good stretches in our back. And then our ankles. We can roll our foot around in one direction, circles, circling the other direction. Inhaling the toes up, exhaling it down. Do that several times. And just those exercises alone have strengthened my ankles to the point where I can step off a curb wrong, twist my foot completely sideways, and keep going. Have no injury from that twist. My back, which I used to have a problem with on occasion when I was in my 20s, now in my 40s, I work harder than I did in my 20s when I do construction, where I make natural buildings on occasion, carrying heavy pieces of wood and stone, and my back does not go out anymore. And also my neck, like I mentioned, which I used to have a problem with on occasion, I have no problems with my neck at all anymore. I did 2 teacher trainings in different styles of yoga, and also studied with people who studied the way the body works. And I came up with some exercise sets. This one called Chair Yoga for Busy People. It has 3 different sets on it. One's only 3.5 minutes long. another one 9 minutes, another one 15 minutes. Everyone can at least find 3 minutes in a day to do a little bit of stretching. And another exercise routine I come with is called Asine yoga, where I have longer routines, a 25-minute set and then a 1-hour set for people who have more time. All of these sets, the exercises are done sitting down or lying down. There are no standing postures, which make it easy for everyone to do. You don't need Gumby-like flexibility or super strength. They're targeted to do the things that we need them to do in the body in the shortest amount of time. They're available on my website at rawfoodsbible.com. Okay, and then as far as our brain goes, I'm sure a lot of us can remember when we were in school, we learned some type of mathematics that we don't remember at all anymore, or we might have learned some foreign language and maybe we're fluent in it one time, and now we're lucky if we can recall enough words to get by talking with someone else of that language. Well, what we need to do is use our mind on a daily basis, or we lose the ability to remember and recall the necessary information needed. Here are some exercises that are really good. You can go shopping in a store, and as you put things into your cart or basket, you can add up the prices. Say round them off at the beginning. This item is $2, the other item is $3. Say that's $5. And by the time you get to the register, you can say, hey, I know what this is going to come out to, and see how accurate you are. And eventually you can get so good that you can add in the change as well, strengthening your brain. There are crossword puzzles. There's the Japanese puzzle called Sudoku. There are many different types of ways to exercise and stimulate your brain. The more you look, the more you'll find. Okay, so the third leg of these pillars of health, the mind-body connection. I'm going to give you some simple scientific evidence that shows how our thoughts have a powerful effect on our immune system. The following study has been done in every medical school in the United States, and they've all come up with the same results. They found that every time we have a thought, we create something called a neuropeptide, and that our immune system's white blood cells have receptors for neuropeptides. The white blood cells actually wait for these neuropeptides to come and tell them what to do. So what is it that they do? Well, if we have positive thoughts, all good thoughts I call coming from a place of love, we'll create a neuropeptide that'll tell that white blood cell to work harder. Go out there, find the bacteria, find the pathogens, keep this place clean, and we'll have a healthy immune system. We'll be less likely to catch whatever diseases are going around. On the other side of the coin, when we have negative thoughts, and what are negative thoughts? Well, hate, jealousy, rage, sadness, stress, yes, stress, fear. I can group all these thoughts as coming from a place of fear. Because when you think about it, why are you stressed? Why are you sad? It's almost always because of some fear. We're afraid something is going to happen. When we have this fear thought, we create a neuropeptide that tells that white blood cell to take some time off. Essentially, you can look under the microscope in live blood cell analysis and see that white blood cell surrounded with bacteria, and because of this fear thought, it will not be attacking the bacteria. It'll just let it go. It's kind of like pressing the compost button every time we have negative thoughts. We're composting from the inside. Now, I know it's hard to keep our thoughts positive all the time. I struggle with that on occasion myself. But I like to look at it this way. I trust the Creator and the greater organization of this universe. If something negative happens to me, the way I rationalize it is that, hey, this has happened because if this didn't happen, something worse would happen later on. Or I'm learning something from this negative experience that's going to help me later in life. I believe that all negative things happen for a greater good than we can understand. And with that knowledge, I learn to let the negative things go I learned to forgive people if they've done me wrong, because I know that when someone does us wrong, we suffer more if we hold a grudge than if we just forgive them and let it go. All the great teachers throughout all the ages have all said, forgive those that do you wrong. And the science shows that our immune system will be greater when we forgive and when we hold positive thoughts. My name is Craig Sommers. I'm a naturopath trained in the United States. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and got lots out of it. I wish you vibrant health and longevity.
I get up in the morning and I eat some fresh fruit. A healthy foundation always starts with the root. I do the raw food cooking. I only eat raw and living food.